Thank you, and again, welcome to anyone. I have bad news and the good news to give you. And the good news is that this is the last intervention of the theoretical part of the workshop, and then we move to the experiential part, which is more alive and emotionally involving. And the bad news is that my intervention will last for around 1 hour, but I give you some passion for that. So let me start with the agenda. I have 3 main points. First of all, I have few brief consideration on what I call the well-being New Deal and the idea of systemic change, just to explain the title of my speech. The second point is devoted to the financial issue. We are at the end of the FRIEND project, and now we are looking to the scale-up phases as an intermediate step toward the full running phase. But the growth path will cost. It is an investment. And the third point addresses both national and European policy intervention, offering our recommendations and tracing a line toward a systemic change in educational system around Europe. Well-being is among the sustainable development goal of the 2030 agenda. Well-being goes hand in hand with the Green New Deal, which is spreading in different countries, even though with some light and shadow. And so the economy of well-being is a bright new narrative which the Finnish European presidency is championing to frame the interplay between economic and social policies. In a world of rising inequality, to preserve the social dimension of economic choices is all the most important, and the educational sector is on the front line. So, therefore, it's refreshing to see such a shift in the understanding of the economy, with government officials contending that investing in well-being makes sense in economic terms, even in times of economic downturn. Well-being and social inclusion are 2 sides of the same coin, and research confirms that spending on childhood and family support policies benefit for society in the long term. The Europe 2020 strategy expires soon, and the new social framework of the European Pillar of Social Rights is assumed to guide the social dimension of the Union. So this is the moment for school to ride the waves, to experiment system change, to strengthen the alliances with families and territorial communities, because new opportunities are at arm's length, while the cost of do nothing are huge and still rising, and if we do not invest in well-being. We have to open our eyes, and in this slide I want to draw your attention on 3 main different macro costs, very huge and dramatically widespreading. The first one is the global cost related to physical, psychological, and sexual violence that have been estimated to range between 3 and 8% of the global GDP. This is a massive cost, many times higher than the investment required to prevent much of the violence from taking place. The second one is the cost of early school leaving, and there is a strong evidence that low educational attainment is associated with high economic cost for private individual and society. Across OECD country, almost 1 of every 5 students does not reach a basic minimum level of skills, and this indicates a lack of inclusion. And students from low socioeconomic background are twice as likely to be low performers, and this indicates a lack of fairness. So the lack of inclusion plus the lack of fairness fuels school failure, on which dropout is the most visible manifestation, with 20% of young adults on average dropping out before finalizing upper secondary education. And the third and equally harmful cost is the cost of teacher sickness, teacher burnout. It is very high, and schools have some of the highest rate of absenteeism of any workplace. And the majority of schools fails to prioritize a work-life balance for their teaching staff. And so stress at work is a real problem for many teachers. We can reduce this cost, in many cases dramatically, by investing in well-business program and inclusive education. So we have to prioritize our investment. We have to put our money where the potential return on investment is higher. I reported here 3 different programs. The first is a cure program, and the second and the third are 2 prevention programs. And we know that prevention always is better than cure, where better means also that it will cost much less. These are back on the envelope evaluations, but confirms that investing in well-being is a strong priority and that KTUTM is an effective way to do so. Coming now to the financial strategies of the Well-being New Deal, we have to recognize that the inspiring criteria of a founding rule for the education system should respond to the general principle of equity in educational opportunity. So we have to invest in fairness, which means support improved student outcome by providing equity of educational opportunity to every student. And we have also to invest in inclusion, which means that specific needs come first, and then the remainder of funding should be distributed on a per-student basis. And we know that among the mainly and different specific needs, inclusive education and well-being outcome have a special place. But we have to measure and to judge the most effective programs, because they are many and diversified, but they are not all equivalent. The FRIEND project have proved the effectiveness of a specific program, the KTUTM, that have confirmed to offer a very exciting cost-benefit ratio. So, gathering all the lessons learned from the FRIEND project, we can derive some policy implication to support schools in doing their best in achieving well-being goals, to war with their struggling and working hard. We must move from the exceptional to normality, to everyday life. And so we need to engage school in long-term capacity building communities. We need to support a multi-year financial plan. And whatever will be the financial rule, we want to have some injection of some degree of meritocracy. So it will better introduce a reward clause, possibly measured on the outcome in terms of student well-being. And we should guarantee also the full availability of all extra budgeting resources gathered by the school at the local level from the surrounding community. We know that policy of well-being go far beyond the educational dimension, and therefore are those on which a joint investment by the school and its community is most appropriate. So in the last 2 slides, I raise some policy recommendation at 2 different levels. And the first is the national one. 2 main recommendations for the national level: enabling schools to be proactive actor of well-being policy. And the first key word is flexibility. And we know that schools should be allowed to manage a flexible curriculum and we have heard about the wonderful experience of the Portuguese program, the project for autonomy and curriculum flexibility that has been introduced. That is a positive example that we have to study and imitate it. And the second key word is autonomy. The planning and the use of the funds for the permanent professional training of the teaching staff should be directly outsourced to schools, thus ensuring the implementation of inclusive education and well-being projects. And finally, I will close with some recommendations for the European level. And three main recommendations are here connected. Supporting and fostering the scale-up of meditation-based practices toward the full running phase as a viable answer to the well-being quest. The first is the use of the European social funds in the next programming cycle. We think that it should dedicate a line on the well-being objectives with calls open to school. The eligible cost should also cover the cost of TM teachers. The second is promoting the European Network Teaching Training Center. We have already known about the experience in the Portuguese country as a tool for exchanging good practice, delivering teacher training, and accompanying school whenever there is not a supporting national TTC. And the first one is promoting research on and evaluation of well-being and inclusive education program, building up and maintaining an European evaluation database, and diffusing and fostering a scientific approach with an approved implementation protocol. Thank you for your attention.